Hi, everybody. This is Andrew Rants. You may remember me as the host of the Absolutely Completely Random podcast here on YouTube. Well, today I'm not here to talk about my podcast. Unfortunately, I'm here to bring some somber, solemn news to those that love the game of Yugioh. Friends, our beloved game is pretty much screwed. Say what? I hear you typing. Well, unfortunately, a new mechanic is being released, and this information dropped last week. Pretty much, not to wonderful testaments either. Basically, we're getting a new mechanic called link summoning. Now, I hear you asking, well, what in the hell is link summoning? Well, link summoning is basically like fusion, synchro, and xyz summoning. Only, in this case, you're using X amount of monsters, I should say. Not really 3 or more. It's X amount of monsters to create a link monster, which then goes into the new field, which I'll get into that in a little bit, to basically open up the gateway to your old field, which can now be used then to bring out your extra deck monsters. So, what is this new field, you're asking? Well, that would be the extra monster zone. This is basically where monsters that are summoned from the extra deck have to go. Unless, of course, you have a link monster there, in which case the link markers, which are these little crappy arrows pointing on the card, then make it so they can go into the adjacent fields. Wonderful, right? And all this basically is brought about right as the Yugioh Arc V series is done and V-Reigns is preparing to start up. Now, a lot of people out there are going, so pendulums are finally dead. Yep, you can be happy now. I never had a problem with pendulum monsters. I actually enjoyed them. I can see people spamming the hell out of them. I can see people getting annoyed with those that spam the hell out of them. Do I think it's fair? No. Do I think it's right that an entire construct of cards are basically being shelved to the back row to make room for a mechanic that I can safely say, in my opinion, is going to ruin the game? No. I don't think it's fair. So, why am I saying this? Why am I doing this video? Why have you probably already turned off by now, but for those of you that stuck around to listen to me rant, why do I care? Well, because it basically means 3 things. 1, certain decks are now completely worthless. 2, any avid Yu-Gi-Oh fan has to learn a whole new gameplay because Konami wants to change up the entire board to keep the game fresh. And 3, those that enjoy the extra deck for Synchro, Fusion, and xyz summoning now basically have it as a hindrance. What do I mean by the last one? Your extra deck is now your biggest hard nightmare. It's never going to be helpful to you anymore. You can't just bring out 2 monsters and then xyz summon X amount of creatures from it. Or you can't use pendulum monsters to bring out 5 monsters from your hand and then xyz summon 2 monsters using the synchro or the xyz material that you just scored. Can't do that anymore. And why do you ask, can't you do this anymore? Well, you can thank the almighty and all-powerful Konami for screwing us once again. Now, in my opinion, here's a couple things they could have done to not screw us over. But before I get into that, let me explain the other 2 options and the other 2 reasons why I think this is going to be screwed up. The first one was now certain deck types are now worthless. This is true. Anybody that was building a Performapal deck or a Dynomist deck basically don't even bother anymore. The reason for this? The cards are worthless. There's no point. With this new mechanic, a majority, if not all of the Dynomist cards are pendulum monsters, meaning that trying to bring any of them out onto the field is worthless. You're never going to get anywhere, nor is it even a good idea to try. So, you can't really build a Dynamis deck, which is sad because I got almost enough cards to make a decent Dynamis deck, and now Konami has to basically railroad over that. I thought they were pretty cool monsters. The second is the Performapal deck, like I said in the first place. This deck, not all the monsters are Pendulum, but a good chunk of them are. Unfortunately, the Performapal monsters are now worthless to you as well. Now, there are some others, like, I believe they were saying the, the Zodiac decks, or something like that. A lot of the new meta ones are now worthless, and they're useless to you, because you don't know if they're going to be usable anymore. This whole new format, which I first off have to say is being tried out in Japan, so maybe the OCG, maybe it won't work as well as they're hoping for there, and they won't even bother bringing it to the TCG, which would pray to any god for that to happen. But we know it's not gonna. So, needless to say, we're going to be getting this. And somewhere within the next 6-7 months, we're going to be getting this. Now, why is your extra deck a hindrance? I covered that. Why is it a bad thing now? I covered that. Why are the Yu-Gi-Oh fans pissed? Well, I'm a little upset. Besides the fact that we now have to learn an entirely new set of rules, changes to the older rules that we've been used to for how many years now, are basically being rewritten, including the entire field. It's not a good way to start it off, Konami. But what could they have done? What could they have done differently? Well, I have a few ideas. What they could have done differently to begin with is they could have instigated a Battle City rule. Remember back in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, Kaiba hosted the Battle City tournament? Remember the rule that Kaiba had in that? That fusion monsters can't attack the first turn they're summoned? They could have done something like that for any monster that's brought out from the extra deck. Monsters cannot be monsters that are special summoned from the extra deck would be unable to attack on their first turn. This would have actually panned out so much better and would have actually slowed the game down. And it would have made it so that those draw 5 pendulum weenies that spammed the hell out of this and ruined it for everybody, you know who you are, they would have basically gotten what was coming to them. Another idea they could have done, and I do mean this, they could have come up with a whole new idea and a construct in the ruling. Not create a whole new archetype. Or basically just throw a couple new cards into the mix that could have basically locked up your extra deck. And I do mean that. A couple cards to make it so that you can't access your extra deck, or even a monster with an effect that makes it impossible to use the extra deck for anything. Any card that's sent there is automatically destroyed, or even a card that automatically banishes pendulum monsters. It doesn't send them to the extra deck, it banishes them. Would have been so much better than an entirely new gimmick. Now, the pendulum monsters aren't really dead, but you can't bring out 5 of them anymore, nor 4, nor 3 from the extra deck. The reason for this is because of the new style of gameplay and the new game board itself. All of which, by the way, make the dual discs pretty much now obsolete. Thanks a lot, Konami. So, what does this basically mean for the entirety of Yu-Gi-Oh? Well, for one, it may not last as much longer than it would have. I'm really hoping that this blows over big time and that Konami realizes their mistake. Because, let's face it, I like Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't want to see it die. But, at the same time, we have to be prepared for the worst and take the good with the bad. We might be forced to deal with this for a while to come. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean that we couldn't get used to it, but after spending the entire weekend, and most of this week even, trying to figure out this whole link summoning thing and how exactly it's going to impact the game, I, for one, kind of have some major issues with it. Besides the fact that it seems like the entirety of link summoning is a flawed system in itself, they could have just came out with the whole new style of monster, made it so that you pull it out from said deck, and then came up with the gimmick that any cards that are added to the link basically power up each other. Would have been cooler doing that than having it be oh yeah, it's got to go into this zone, and it's the only way you can bring out more monsters from your extra deck. Why, Konami? Why? So, people now are scrambling to find other cards. They're scrambling now for anything else. One card I'm kind of happy I got my hands on, mostly by chance, I should say, is Pandora's Jewelry Box, because one of the only ways as of right now I can see avoiding the Wrath of the Link monsters is to not have an extra deck at all. And I do mean that. That is like the only method I see for preventing the extra deck monsters from being a hindrance to you. And Pandora's Jewelry Box would be a good card to add to your deck then, because as long as you bring the monster out, granted it's a pendulum monster, but if you bring it out on the field, you get to draw 2 cards during your draw phase if you don't have an extra deck. And this would be about the best time to not have an extra deck. Of course, there are other good cards that'll probably be seeing the light of day again, some old school ones and whatnot. But we have to remember, the extra deck was our friend for the longest time. And now it's time for us to sadly say goodbye to it. And thank you, Link Summoning, for killing it. So, in closing, I guess I should say that I'm not a fan of Link Summoning, Konami. And I know there are a lot of people out there that are going to tell me that I'm misleading them, that I'm wrong. But let's face it, if you can't enjoy the game anymore, then why bother having it? Change too much stuff and make the game more difficult, the players are going to get frustrated and quit. But if you make it too easy, they get bored and will never want to play again. Konami, I think you might have gone to the latter, and you might have made it way too difficult. But keep in mind, that's just my theory and my opinion. So I should say until next time, this is Andrew Rhodes saying don't forget to check me out on the Absolutely Completely Random podcast. New episodes uploaded each week. I also have other videos up where I unwrap stuff, I review stuff, and I will catch you next time. Hit the thumbs up if you like this video. Hit the thumbs down if you don't. Leave a comment and tell me what your favorite summon from the extra deck was. Was it Fusion? Was it Synchro? Was it Xyz? Did you like the Pendulum monsters? And let me know your theories on this whole new Link summoning mechanic. Do you think it's going to be good? Do you think it's going to be horrible? Do you think Konami's finally killed the game of Yu-Gi-Oh with this? Do you think it's going to be the swan song? I'm really hoping it's not, because I really like this game. So anyway, I think that's going to pretty much do it for now. So until next time, like I said, I'm Andrew Rhodes, saying goodbye, good luck, and please, Konami, don't mess up Yu-Gi-Oh. Bye, everybody.